Welcome to Off Topic but On Point. I'm Adette Beer. As usual, I have with me my beautiful friends, Dr. Janine de Cabo, also known as the Intentionalist, and Pastor Christo Pretorius, the Expander. Let's go.
Welcome to Off Topic and On Point, the podcast where the conversation may start anywhere, but somehow it always lands exactly where it needs to be. Today, we are going into something every one of us has faced, maybe avoided, some of us resisted, or tried to stay fast track, and that is process. Nobody claps for process. That part feels really slow at times, and the other part looks like nothing is happening. And it also comes to the part where you start asking, did I miss it? Did I hear wrong? Or is this even working? Everyone wants the breakthrough. Everyone wants the testimony, and everyone wants the promotion, the platform, the healed relationship, the the successful business, the banners, the answered prayer. But very few people want the process that prepares them to carry it. The truth is that you cannot skip the part that is building the part that you need for your next. And that's where I want to sit today is process is painful, but pain is not always punishment. And sometimes that pain is the preparation for your next season. So there are things that you cannot learn from a quote. I mean, in our past episodes, we've actually spoken about unteachable lessons. And these are lessons you cannot download from somebody else's experience. You have to go through it. There are parts of you that can only become strong when life puts weight on them. And you have to decide whether you will collapse or whether you will grow capacity. If you've listened to some of our podcasts and episodes, we speak about, is this the hill you will die on? And today I'm joined by two of my friends, Odette Beer and Christo Pretorius, and we are asking the real questions. What process did you try to bypass? What discipline did you resist? What pain formed you in ways that success really never could? And what part of your current season do you need to stop resenting? Since it may be the very thing preparing you for what you've prayed for. The system is not always against you, even though it feels like it. Sometimes the system is actually protecting you from arriving unprepared. So let's talk about the middle today, the place where most people quit. And I see that smile on his face, and I'm not sure if he's nervous or really excited about what they're going to talk about. But this episode is you can't bypass this part. So you guys can answer in any way you want and in any order that you want. But the first question for me today is, what is one painful process in your life that you now see as necessary, even though you resisted it at the time?
I'd probably say the current one that I'm in. Um, I was driving the other day towards a client, and I was just thinking about becoming good at sales, and obviously getting new clients in. And then I was thinking about a lion that goes and hunts, and it just like it dawned on me that that lion don't show up in the savannah, and he just catches the first animal he puts his eyes on. I mean, it's fail, it's training, it's preparation as a cub. They taught by their parents to start hunting, and they're starting developing that skill. And even when they are a mature lion, they still don't have 100% success rate, every animal that they chase. And it just solidified to me that you don't start out great. You have to start somewhere and you grow into that greatness. And so I think for me, there's not a specific, process that maybe stands out today. I think every major, let's call it achievement that that I set my sights on, cost me something. From the time that I was in school and I wanted to play provincial cricket, I still remember, I think it was 1994, that we were playing at Marie Viljoen, one of the high schools in Alberton. And I saw somebody in the nets practicing, and he had a baggy cap. That's what you call the cap that you wear in cricket. And he had a baggy cap on with the Transvaal primary school logo. And I was like, I want to have one of those. And the process was brutal because it was practicing after hours. It was practicing on Friday nights when all my friends were out to go to the mall or into parties. I was in my mom's creche in their kitchen area. My dad was doing throwdowns. We would practice. I would work on my batting. It was hours and hours of practice. When other people gave up, you had to continue. When I think about marriage, obviously setting up, you're excited and you're looking forward to it, and then you start realizing, okay, that this is where the tacky hits the tar, and you got to go through stuff, and you got to work through stuff, and you got to deal through stuff. Going into ministry, everything was exciting in the beginning, and then you realize the work that you need to put in. You're not going to achieve greatness by just being stagnant. And so, and even now in business as well, same thing. So for me, every great goal that I set out, was a tough process. And I can't say that any one of them, I was really prepared for what it took, because I think process for me is an unpredicted path with undetermined outcomes that can only be determined by what you learn, what you implement, and how you adapt. And so every new process, has its own unfamiliar, unknown areas and aspects that you need to step into. But having the willingness to say yes and to keep on walking, I think that's where the key lies.
You remind me of something now, and I just made a note. That's why the entrepreneurial journey is so difficult, because you're always starting over and you're always starting something new. So especially if you have many businesses, I said to someone that I coached a while ago, and when I said it, the words hit me as well. It's like, I don't think you understand the amount of weight that I carry in doing what I'm doing, because they wanted to do various things like me. And I'm like, I don't know if you understand the weight that I carry, the responsibility that I carry, the things that I go to bed with at night. And this is maybe why, because every new venture, every new process, every new business, every new idea, it doesn't even have to be every new department, every new strategy. You go through this process of excitement. You said it so beautifully, excitement. I almost want to say then reality hits, and then you have to work your way through that process. And then I think disappointment comes because you had an expectation, and then the reality, that difference between the two often is disappointment. It's underwhelmed. It's definitely not overwhelmed. And then comes the overwhelm because you didn't expect that. And you have to work through. You have to find solutions. You have to problem solve. And if you have many and different things happening all at the same time, the pressure becomes really, really hard. And that is a painful process. I do see that as necessary, because that's where the growth comes. It's just not easy.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's not easy.
When you think of the scripture that says His mercies is new every day, every morning.
Oh, you know why?
And so, yeah, I suppose that, that's life. That every day there's new challenges. Every day there's new opportunities. Every day there's, undetermined outcomes. But it depends on how you're going to, step up and prepare. Or what slogan? Not slogan. Ons lese in high school. What do you call that?
Tagline.
There we go. Was Carpe Diem, which means seize the moment, seize the day.
Seize the day.
And, we thought it was so funny, when we were at school. But today it's like, that's so powerful. You got to seize the day, seize the moment. Nobody else is going to take it for you. You have to take it.
I think I agree with you both. The reality is, I have probably resisted every process that I faced. I'm learning not to resist it. I really don't like the process, and I understand the work your process. I understand that greatness requires process. I understand all of those things. And still, when you're like right in the middle of it, that's where we all kind of go, does it feel good? I don't want to do this. The one I probably resisted the most was the becoming, which is a daily thing. It's not a process that started somewhere and ended somewhere. It's a process that I'm in every single day. And the becoming requires you to unbecome. It requires you to undo, unlearn, put that thing down. You won't pick it up. You can't. You used to think that way. No, that's not you anymore. That's not okay anymore. And it's challenging because it challenges the way that you face everything, whether it's your business, whether it's your family, whether it's your daily life. It challenges your character. There are things that you did. There are definitely things that I did and said before that I now know I categorically cannot say because that's not you anymore. And a part of me is like, oh, freedom of speech. Come on. No. Freedom of speech applies to people who can keep their mouth shut. Those people have freedom of speech because you're not that person anymore. That's not where you are anymore. And I think, as you said in the beginning, people see the process as punishment. It's not. If you think about a lump of clay, the process for the lump of clay is actually quite brutal. It starts as a lump, but it expands past the crystal. Expansion happens in the process. It's not just that your capacity is formed. We all have innate capacity, but your capacity is expanded and it's strengthened and it's stretched and that's uncomfortable. That's not nice. And yet, it's the very thing that determines whether or not you will be able to carry, Dr. J, the weight that you carry today. I have seen for myself how people have skipped through the process to bypass it. That process actually builds your character. And when you bypass that, the character on the other end is not able to carry the weight. And that's when you see people rise quickly and crash. This little bit in the middle, this is where David was waiting for 17 years. He was anointed as king, but he wasn't king for another 17 years. He was challenged. He was thrown spears at. He was lied to. He was betrayed. He was mistreated. He knew, like, the promise didn't change. God anointed him. You're anointed. And still for 17 years, he was in a process before he was actually king. But his character had to catch up with his calling.
Very true.
It reminds me of the story in my book, Intentionality, where I almost start off the book with the fact that in my life, I've always just done the stuff. In my life at that point was primary school. I did the things just to get by. So I would practice. I was always first team. I was 18, but I just did enough to get into that team, just did enough to play the game, to win, just studied enough to do well. And the success was there. But in my inside, in my heart of hearts, I knew I wasn't doing my best. And that decision after decision after decision after decision became my life. And then I went through high school like that. I went through university like that, always passed, always had proper grades, managed to make it through. And then life hit me at the age of about 20, 24, when I went through divorce. And at that stage, I just realized that not everything, by me skipping that process and not doing what was needed, has not given me the capacity now that I need to work through this thing in my life. And I think a part of this podcast and the message of today is don't wait for things to collapse in your life. Don't wait for a life-changing moment before you realize I have to build capacity. I have to expand. I have to be intentional about the things that I'm doing. I have to practice now for that moment. And I heard something so powerful from a mentor of mine a little while ago, because I used to say that all the time until I now heard what he said. And I would used to say that, but I did my best. I gave everything. I gave all. And he just looked at me and he's like, well, sometimes that does not meet requirement. And I was like, you know, it doesn't matter if I give my best. If it doesn't meet requirement, it's not enough. And then I realized, but requirement is also something that you build over time by going through the process, by working through the motions and doing what is needed when it doesn't even feel like it's needed, what you're building. What part of the growth, Odette, what part of the growth, I want to say, do people romanticize in public, but then they secretly resent it when in their private life?
The practice. A while ago, we spoke about scaffolding, right? Do you remember? I'll bring the podcast listeners into this. A while ago, it was about a year ago, I think, the house behind us was being built. And I was sitting one morning and I was looking at the scaffolding, and God dropped in my spirit, scaffolding is what he's building in us. It's what he's building for us. And I started unpacking, and Pastor C is a builder, so he understands scaffolding. He's like, yeah, it makes you go high. And I was like, oh, wait, that's what it is. It's the unsexy part. Everyone wants the process. Actually, most people will say, work your process or some variation thereof. We've all heard that, and we're all like, I'm working my process. Yes, you are. But working your process means biting your tongue. It means being humble. It means giving honor when it would be far easier to discredit that person. It means forgiving even when they did you wrong. That's part of working your process. That's part of it. It means not, and I can say this because if you've met me, you know I am super judgmental. It means you can't judge them. It means celebrating with people who are succeeding when you think, actually, how dare they? Is God blessing them and not me? It means recognizing that the deeper, the higher the call, the higher the use God has for you, the deeper the pain will be inflicted on you, the harder the process will be for you. Everyone wants to be globally ring. Everyone wants to go viral. I get that. I see that. But there's the price. The price is deep betrayal. The price is heartbreak on levels that you cannot even begin to understand until you are in the middle of it and you're like, Lord, how? People think I work my process until they get hit in the face with a process that breaks every part of you and you're like, oh, this is what they meant. And then we want to skip through it. Then we want to say, oh, can we just, I'm done. I'm not, this is not for me. And it's in that moment, can you imagine if King David, when Saul the first time threw a spear at him, said, I'm out. This isn't for me. There would never be a scripture that said, and there will always be a king on the throne of David. Never. Jesus would not come from the line of Jesse. Like the ramifications of David choosing to give up in that moment is huge. So we romanticize our work, my process. And then because we can deal with hard work, Dr. J, Pastor C, I think we can all most people can be like, hard work's easy. Hard work I can do. But you get tired and your body gets tired and I need to figure out things. And we've got AI now, so it's a little bit easier to do hard work because, the mundane things is taken away from you. So it's a little bit faster. But I think the things that we
Hard work.
resent is the emotional
Yes.
hurt. It's the betrayal from your best friend. It's the family members who turn against you. It's the person you thought that would never leave that left. And you're like, Lord, but where were you? It's that part that we resent. And I keep coming back to God said, I will make all things work together for your good. And the higher the call, the deeper the pain. Why? Because he tests our heart. He wants to see, can I trust you with this? Dr. J is where she is because she's been through the fire of testing, of trials. There's flames when it comes to purification. But it's not hot like barley hot. No, it burns off all the impurities, all the things that are not meant to be there so that you can carry with humility what God's given you, but so that you can understand who it's for. Because what you carry isn't for you. Your call's not for you. It's for somebody else. But you won't carry it and point them to Jesus if you haven't gone through the heart surgery.
It's powerful, Ade. People think you mentioned the word viral. I mean, in social media, I'm very familiar with the word viral, but nobody went to where it comes from. Virus that spreads rapidly. It's like not always a good thing. It's a lot of things that went into that to create that. It didn't just one day just happen. Like everybody thinks a viral post just went viral. No, there's a lot of things that led up to it, and then it started to spread rapidly. And I think that's part of the process that people resent, is that they think it needs to happen really quickly, virally, but they miss all the things that led up to. If you think of a virus in your body, you don't just catch a virus. It's stuff that was broken down within your body or that wasn't right, and then one day it came. It's a lead up of a process, and then something happens. Pastor C, you want to say something?
I was just thinking about this lady that went viral a couple of years ago, the Hawk Tour girl. And I think it was 2 years ago. So completely, she was on the street at a nightclub, but they were out on the town, went to a restaurant, whatever the case might be. And somebody just randomly interviewed her, just asked her a question, and obviously she went viral. And from there, she started a podcast, and she had a lot of merchandise. And then she started she got her own crypto coin, and she went into a crypto project without the knowledge of exactly, what this is. And that thing blew up, and it came crashing down, and she was in for millions of dollars, and I think even jail time. And the reason I'm referring to this is that I do think we live in a society where, we seek the fame or the glamour without understanding the character that is needed to sustain that. And you were speaking about, the heavy weight that you carry, and, it's exactly that is, you don't understand, what that place that you so desire is going to expect of you, that's going to take from you. You look at the all of the famous child stars that really struggled through life because they couldn't handle the fame. And it wasn't their fault, but it's a system. That system doesn't care. It pulls from you. It will suck everything from you. And if you are not well prepared, well grounded, or have a good support system around you, I beg to differ that that's a blessing. It's actually a curse. It's like the Powerball, what do you call it? The lotto, the lotto millionaires. Statistics show that I think it's 70 or 80%, if not more, of those people that win the lottery that become millionaires within 2 years have lost everything and are worse off. And it's once again that your character needs to be built to sustain you for where you are going. And we live in this instant society where we don't want to go through the preparation. We don't want to go through, the hard stuff. It's only hard because, what's that old saying from this Afrikaans show, Konings? I'll quote in Afrikaans and we can put the subtitles in English. Maar the old uncle used to say, die lewe is soos 'n nikkerbol, hard, maar baie lekker. It's those simple truths, that we need to realize. Things that come easy, you don't value that. You don't appreciate that. And so when I look at process and I look at, how to maybe, address this or how to prepare yourself for it, there's probably two things you got to think about. The first thing is you have to ask yourself, do you want to be a pioneer? Pioneering new ground, new avenues, new industries? Or secondly, do you want to be a guardian of the path that already exists? And then you simply follow the path. You follow the process, the recipe, that what has been laid out for you. And you will have your obstacles and your challenges and those type of things. But there is an element of predictability if you just stay on the path. My grandmother that passed away a couple of years ago, she baked the best milk tart in the entire world. Nobody better than her. If you disagree with me, unfortunately, we can't settle it because she's no longer around. But in my opinion, I've had many a milk tart. Milk tart was my birthday cake when I grew up. That's all I wanted for my birthday cake was milk tart. And I mean, my grandmother could just bake the best one. But she had a predictable recipe. She could give me that exact recipe and I could not produce the exact same milk tart. Because it's not just about having or knowing what the ingredients are, what is required of me, but it is the trial and tested elements of timing and mixing certain ingredients together that determines the outcome. And so you have the principles and you have, the substance of the matter, but there's also the timing, that you need to allow to take place. And so ask yourself the question, do I want to be a guardian of a path that there is a set path and a process that has been laid out for me that I can simply follow? It will come with its challenges. It will come with its unpredictability. However, there is an element where you can predict where and how long this will take you. Or the first aspect is you have to ask yourself, do I want to be a pioneer? And then you're going to go where nobody has gone before and you have to break ground and you have to, just go through the bush and find whatever it is you are looking for. It's a lot harder. It's probably a lot more rewarding because now everybody will look at you as a pioneer. But those are the two elements that you need to ask yourself before you step on this journey, because it's going to determine how you prepare and how you saddle up and how you buckle up and what you're going to, have in your backpack to ensure that you can sustain this journey.
So true. I want to pose this question to the listeners and then to you guys is, what discipline did you once resist that later became part of your strength? So I want you to think back. Is something that you were like, I'm not going to do that. You probably said, it's not me. It's not who I am. It's not part of the person that I am. You kept resisting it. And then at some point, you actually started liking it. You did it. And then you realize, wow, actually, this is really helping me. I want you to think about what that discipline is. And then before you answer, Boss C is like, you spoke about the lottery and you spoke about character as an example. I think if we take lottery as the example, the reason why the people struggle, because you have character, if you work the process backwards, character, discipline, habits, or habits form that becomes the discipline, and then that forms part, the behavior changes, that becomes your character. So the reason why a lotto winner most of the time, and they say after a year they don't have that money, is because they missed a piece of the process, or maybe more than one, which was they didn't have financial discipline and they also didn't have healthy financial habits. So because they skip that, it just goes. And it's the same thing. I've started doing this is when stuff comes to me easily, I'm suspicious. And I'm like, what just happened here? So now I want to work the process backwards, because remember, I told you guys I choose hard because I don't want to miss the steps. Because if I miss a step, I'm going to have to make up for it double somewhere else. So if something comes easy, I start to think, what is the disciplines that I need for this thing to sustain? What is the habits that I need to implement that I maybe have not? Maybe I have, because you've also heard me say that you never start from scratch, you start from experience. So sometimes I can pull habits and disciplines from other things in my life that I've already planned in and just say, okay, apply it to this. So that the thing that comes easy, don't leave easy as well. And that I'm able to sustain it and actually multiply and grow and make it go really big. So if I can answer from my side, a discipline that I resisted, that became part of my strength, it was exercise. It actually helped me in my mind, it helped me in my body, it helped me with strength, and it gave me just different definitions of strength, and it helped me to sustain and carry through when it comes to energy, clarity, and many things to come with that.
Yeah, for me, it would be the power of the simple principle of planning. I used to just go day by day. Even if I had meetings and appointments, I would remember that, I've got an idea what I need to do. And then I was forced to start opening up a calendar and, start putting in, the things that I'm doing. Where today, like I've got weeks, even months in advance of appointments that's set within the calendar, and for me, it was tough because I was like, that's going to bog me down. I can't be, this free spirited person, sparky sanguine, do what I want to do when I want to do it. Nobody's going to bog me down and like put me to the calendar. Where now it's such a predictable value for me because I know where my week is going. I know where my month is going. I know what lies ahead. And I still leave, days and weeks and slots open to have that inspirational element. And I still do have, this morning somebody messaged me and said, listen, can we jump on a phone call? I'm like, great. I've got a podcast, and then after the podcast, I've got an hour, we can jump there. But then after that, I've got 2 or 3 meetings that's already been stacked up. So for me, it might be a simple principle of planning, but having that calendar and know where I'm going, and to an extent for me now, that's no longer just my calendar or my meetings for the week and the month. That becomes like my vision board, because that's where my life is going to go. That's where my life is going to move. When I go into my calendar and I see, in the month or 2 months ahead, like there's nothing, I'm like, shucks, I need to fill it. I need to have things in place.
It's funny how the calendar can bring comfort.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I would say that's definitely a discipline that I had to work on. And I think it was about 2 years ago, Dr. Janine, you mentioned about, when you open up your Outlook or your browser, where do you go first? You go to your emails, you go to your calendar. Because if you go to your emails, then people determine your day. If you go to your calendar, then you determine your day. And that's another principle that I just added, like stacking it on top of what I'm currently, doing. Is like, okay, I go to my calendar first and I say, okay, what needs to happen today before I jump into the ever bottomless ocean of emails and WhatsApp messages. And then a second discipline that I've installed is that, and that's I've done it recently, so I can't brag about it. It's something I've done recently, is that where I've determined, what time I spend where. And not just because there's 10 emails in my inbox or just because there's 20 messages on my WhatsApp doesn't mean I'm going to respond immediately to everything. Because that's how I used to be, is that the moment a message comes in, I would respond. An email comes in, I would respond, because I want to be courteous. And then I realized she's sitting there the whole day waiting for stuff to come in, because I don't want to get busy with something now and somebody messages me. And it was a tough one, because it felt like I pride myself on responding as soon as possible to people's, requesting messages. But I've realized that, I have to prioritize myself, my schedule, and the priorities within my life. So those are the two things.
Mine is similar but different. It's the same but different. I used to be quick fast because being quick fast makes you valuable and makes people like you and gets you noticed because you have the answer. It's 90% correct. And I had to slow down, and that was hard. And it's not just that I was quick in responding to a message or a text. I was quick in making decisions. Now, let me be clear. Making quick decisions isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But for me, I was the one that was on it. So there was a decision to be made. I'd make it. Now it's done. We've got this. No, because sometimes you actually don't need the decision right now. And sometimes you need some space to breathe. And in that space, seeking silence, not for the sake of silence, but for the sake of clarity, for the sake of, Lord, where am I supposed to go with this so that I can understand my capacity, so that I can pull apart the bits of my character that's being tested or that's got to step up in a different way. Can I do this? Like, do I have the characters to support this? Is this for me? Or is this one of those things that, you know how, I don't know, maybe you don't know. Life and people around you often pulls you to the latest thing, the latest fad. Here is visibility. Let's be visible. Let's be out there. Why? What's the motive behind that? Why? Why are you doing that? I know why they're doing that, but why are you doing that? So that's kind of, I had to slow down to unpack it. And I think that's helped me understand, what did I ask God for? And is this in line with what I've asked him for? Do I have capacity? Dr. J and I were talking before the show about capacity and things that I've had to release because God's given me the instruction to do so. And I know for those of you, sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, you're just saying that, but she's just giving up. No, it's not actually that. There's so much to this. You have to release it. So releasing it so that there is capacity for something else, understanding where my character is being tested, and being aware of those things. And you can't do that when you're constantly on the mouse hamster wheel ball. And then in that time, it gives you the ability to be consistent, because I like consistency. I like to be consistent. I like people to say, you know what, if nothing else, it is consistent. Yes, because then at least you know what you're getting. Whether it's this side or that side, you know what you're getting. I like that. And then part of that, I think, is understanding what community is around you and whether or not you need community for that. If you are able to slow down long enough, you may be able to hear that the Lord directs you to amazing friends to start a podcast. And 2 years later, we still have a really, really cool podcast, and we are constantly sewing into each other. But also, like, I feel there's a lot of stretching and smoothing out, and like, you know, there's molding taking place in this room for us. And I think if you've been listening for the past 2 years, for you too, which is amazing. And also in that space, that silence, that I don't have to do this right now. Sometimes I need to find courage for this thing that God's asked me to do, or this thing that I feel I know I need to do, but it's just super scary. And that courage comes from stillness and understanding the scaffolding that sits behind it. I celebrate the scaffolding now. I didn't before because it's ugly. Nobody likes a scaffolded house. It's ugly. You go buy a house, so you're not looking for the one at the scaffolding. You're looking for the one that's finished, the one that's got all the pretty furniture and stuff. But I celebrate that now. And then, of course, stewardship. Like, not, Dad said it before, not ownership, but stewardship. I don't own anything. I'm here to steward it. That's a heart issue. That's my 10 cents.
Sometimes we have to become somebody in the process that, first of all, either we previously didn't like or we didn't know we needed to be that person. As an example, in my own life, I like the colors of Lynette Beer. We've got the red and the blue on this side, and then underneath is the yellow and the green. So basically, the yellow is this side is very extroverted, the yellow and the red, and that side is introverted, which is the green and the blue. And if I look back on my life and that person that I was explaining earlier that I just did enough to get by, I was operating and it was it's always just been about people. I love people. I love relationships. So I was operating in the yellow and green very, very, very strongly, almost at this carefree attitudes about life and everything is just going to be fine. And I mean, somebody else explains it as a palmboom or like the palm tree personality. And I was like that. And then I want to say, you can either say when I grew up, when life hit, when responsibility came, when I really needed to, I had to become the person that I actually didn't like. The one that was bogged down, calendar driven. Not that I wanted that, apostasy. It was what was required in that season of my life. And I actually moved to, or had to become, to survive, it felt like at some point, a process that I never would have chosen. I mean, I think all of us, for me at least, I never wanted to grow up. I love being a child. I love the carefree. And even as an adult, I'm seeking opportunities now to just have that feeling and go into the bush and just feel that feeling again. So I think a lot of the time process forces us to become somebody. And this is where I had to change it. Not somebody that I didn't want to become. Somebody that I didn't know I needed to become to move through to this process or to become a better version of me. Because in this process, I've learned that being the dominant red, which is still the leader, carries a lot of weight. And that person needs other characteristics and other habits and other disciplines to carry them through. Being the blue, the planner blue, is a good thing because it helps me to manage and organize all these things that I can be. And I believe luckily I'm that person where I can migrate between them. And then I can also take the moment on a weekend just to relax and breathe and be that childlike again. And it helps me with faith as well. So the question I have is, who did you have to become to survive a process that you never would have chosen in your life?
This is not rhetorical.
No, it's
It's a legit question.
It's a legit question. And I know the silence is because it's a deep one. You have to pull from somewhere.
I'm the opposite of you, Dr. J. My natural tendency is blue-red. So the opposite of that is green and yellow. It's about people. The me 20 years ago was about process, facts, and information. And if you ain't going to do your job, I'm going to go find your boss. And we going to sort this out. Don't you worry. By the end of the week, you'll be doing your job. Or you'll be invited not to, and you'll go do it somewhere else. But we're going to get it done.
That's a big change. Let me just say, that's a huge... I had to learn responsibility, if I can say it like that, going from flowery yellow to red and blue. But, yellow people, it's just how it is, irritate the reds and the blues. So now you had to become the opposite of what you didn't like those people.
No, I did not. These and by the way, that's Brianna, my youngest daughter. She is green and yellow, 100%. Annabelle's blue, not red, so probably more green. But that's the part of the unbecoming, the part of the journey that we don't like, that I'm still in, that I still need to work with people who don't plan. some days are easier than others, you know. Some days I can, then it's okay. And then other days I need to, like I say, take a deep moment. We don't have to respond right now. We need to walk away, and we'll come back and circle back next week maybe, because right now is not the moment. Or the social butterflies. Hey, those yellow people that they are so much social butterflies. They're so sparkly. It's very cute, but nothing ever gets done, and they never where they're supposed to be. And like, I tell you, it's only by grace. 100%. It's by grace that I haven't broken anyone yet. And I'm not gonna, because it's by grace. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
When the process gets harder, then what old version of you tries to like come back?
The red one. Very quickly, which is why I've had to, I have a muzzle. It's like, And in addition to that, my face generally shows you the subtitles. So it's a dual process. And without subtitles. So.
Brilliant.
Right, so I'm going to read you something that somebody wrote to me in a very interesting time in my life that is on point to your question here, Dr. Janine. All right, so the message goes. Thank you, Christy. I experience an excitement in my spirit for you. You are on the brink of entering a new time and a season in your life. It's bound and scheduled to happen. It will work out well, and also it's the way the Lord has intended. There is a great gift of diplomacy the Lord has given you, and you will draw much from this gift in this transition time. Always remember this gift is from the Lord in your life for His purpose, but never compromise with the convictions which the Lord has settled in your heart. This hit me so hard because it was so in line with the time and the transition that I was going through. And I suppose for me, the toughest, process of becoming, a person was exactly that, is to have the gift of diplomacy, but to not settle, for the convictions that the Lord has placed within your heart. And how to come across, not spiteful, arrogant, opposing, whatever the case might be, but to stand your ground. And it's very difficult and it's very tough, but it's something that I am becoming. I'm definitely not there yet, but for me, that was the toughest expectation of the person I was becoming, that I had to focus on, because there was times we had to step up, and then there were times we had to step back. And to know when to do that, nobody that you have to step up to or that you have to step back from will tell you where that line is. And so you have to determine that for yourself. However, having gone through that, I can absolutely see let's call it the finish line of that process. Not that it's finished, but I'm now stepping into a time where I can help and assist people in these transitions because I've been through it. And it wasn't nice. However, it was worth it.
It's powerful if you look at the definition of diplomacy. It's a peaceful practice to conduct negotiations, to build relationships and manage conflicts, to advocate for the interests of other people, not just your own. It's a very, very powerful and very, very weighty responsibility to carry. And I think if you have to go back, you will to an older version. It's very, very easy to just go back to the old version, and not that you were ever selfish or ever just thinking about yourself. But that you will just resort back to that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's so easy to go back to your default setting. Um, it takes intentionality, being on purpose, deciding when you know where you want to go, and you make the decision not to go there. It's tough. It's not easy. You know. Um, it's also possible that you now become bound by it is your responsibility to take care of everybody. And I did fall into that trap as well. And then thankful for a person in my life that I had the privilege of in that season to sit down with. And this is what they said, is that they said, Christo, abundance awaits you. Abundance awaits you. And I said, yes, but what about all the people? And then they said, their abundance awaits them. And so many times we want to make decisions on behalf of other people that we see they need to make because we know where that will take them. But it's to stand back, and now that I'm a parent, I know it, I realize it even more and more, is that my little boy, he just has to make some mistakes because he must make that decision because he's going to live with the consequences.
That's true.
And I suppose knowing when to get out of the way and allow people to make those decisions and to take that step is probably more important than having the gift of diplomacy or speaking your conviction. But it's allowing that person to step into their own. And man, when that takes place, it's probably one of the most beautiful moments when you see somebody, and we use this word maybe too frequently, but they're coming to their own. It's one of the most incredible things that
Rewarding.
you can experience. It's rewarding as a leader, as a friend, as a husband, as a parent. It is the most incredible thing to see that person is stepping into, that what they were called to do, that what they were destined to do, that what, life is expecting of them.
In business, I think we've all seen where people try to scale something that they have not yet built the discipline within them to sustain. What would you guys say is the business process that most entrepreneurs, business owners, and even senior managers, they are skipping? What is the business process that they are skipping because they're trying to scale something, but they don't have the discipline yet?
Yeah, I would probably say, putting in place systems and structures. Because it's the systems and the structures that's going to, once again, that scaffolding principle of Odette, that's going to determine how high this building is going to go. It's not just on your own charisma and your own ability, your sales ability, your ability to communicate, but it's to build those systems and structures. And so it will probably be, for every 2 steps that you go forward in business, you have to stop and then go, maybe 3 steps back and then build that pathway, build that process. Documenting, the process. I think Gary Vee says it so nicely. It's not about making content, but it's about documenting your process. And so, whatever that means, whether it is to put systems and structures in place, whether it's policies and procedures, whether it is recording, videoing, what you are doing and how you are getting there. That for me, it's probably the key thing that I've realized that we maybe miss. Because we're so excited about, let's call it the hunt, to go out there, but we don't realize, have we dug the wells? Have we built the dam before the rain comes? And so we're not prepared for that if we're only looking at the one element, and that is what I'm focusing on now. As much as you are running and as much as you are growing and building, you also have to put in place, those systems and structures that will help you to scale.
I 100% agree with you, Pastor C, and I want to add to the systems and structures, your rhythms and your boundaries. Yes, you have to document, and it's probably the one thing that business people hate doing. Why must I document my process? Yeah, well, we can have a conversation about that. You have to do that. And then you need to have rhythms that you honor, rhythms of planning, rhythms of catching up with your team, rhythms of looking at where we are. Is this still where we want to go? Is it still aligned? And course correcting if necessary, because nothing is set in stone. And making sure that we've got values that are not just on the wall somewhere, but that we're living them, that it's actually something that's alive and breathing in our organization. It's one thing to have a documented process or a system in place. It's another thing to have a culture that supports it. And those two things are not mutually exclusive, but business owners and organizations generally handle them as two separate things and think that you can get away without it. Like it's not necessary. You don't have to talk about it because everybody knows what integrity means. Actually, no, they don't. And then understanding what does success look like and what does succession look like?
Two different things.
Very different. What happens when the leader is no longer there? What happens to the organization? What happens to the people? They're not nice things to think about. But if you are a good leader, then you are going to work yourself out of a job. Working yourself out of a job means that you've created the process, you've created the systems, you've created the culture. Everyone knows what needs to happen, where to find things, where this organization is going with or without you.
Yeah.
And if we remove you, it continues. There shouldn't be questions around what now? Does this continue? Should it still exist? Why are we even here? Do I show up for work tomorrow? And it's not sexy. Let's be honest. The $3 million deal, that's sexy. That everyone's like, yeah, I'm behind that. I get that. But what's going to support that $3 million deal is the back end stuff that nobody wants to do and everyone thinks is skivvy work. Your values don't shape your culture unless it becomes behavior, and you have to be intentional about it.
That's true. I think I want to do a last round of questions, maybe like a quick fire questions. Let's do a personal honesty round. What process are you still fighting right now? Say again, Odette, we couldn't hear you.
The heart process.
The heart, I like that. Yeah. I think for me, it's timing. It always just feels like it's taking too long.
Me, it's doing what is expected.
Yeah. What is one area where you know the system is working, but your impatience keeps telling you that it's not?
That's the work that I've put
Is
in.
life an answer?
Life, yes. It's definitely an answer. I think it's an answer for many people. I couldn't hear what you said, Pastor C.
Yeah, it's the work that I've put in will pay off.
Yeah. I would agree with that one. Yeah.
It's the
And then
Tony Robbins
lastly-
quote that, most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And it's to while we're on this road, to also remember we're building for the future. We're living in the now. We learn from the past, but we need to have our eye on the future as well.
Very true. What would you say to the person who's tired of being told, trust the process?
Be the pioneer. Yeah, I'd probably ask them to do a life audit and to really just look at where they are versus where they've been. And most of the times is that they have just not been made aware of the progress on this path of process that they've been on, because I believe everybody is on a road to progress. If you're not, then great, then you're digressing, and then just get onto the road. But if somebody is tired of hearing the thing of just trust the process, I would encourage them, let's do a life audit, and I'll probably can predict that there has been growth. You just haven't seen it. It takes, I think, 7 years for a bamboo seed to establish its roots. I think it's half a meter above the ground for the first 7 years, and then after that 7 years, it shoots up to a couple of meters. And so when you're planting a bamboo tree or the seed, you want to grow bamboo, you're going to be like, after 5 years, like, this thing's not going to grow. This thing's dead, and you're going to chop it off. But not realizing the root system that has been put in place to sustain that. And so it's possible for those people that are tired of hearing, trust the process, is that it's possible that you are building something so deep and you're not aware of that. And it's to help people become aware of where they are in that journey, where they are in that process. Simon Sinek said this to me yesterday. He said that the most unjust thing that we can do to people is to tell them, be yourself, when they have not figured out who that person is yet. And so we're struggling with things because we don't know how we should respond to those things. And people, and I was a big fan of telling people, I've got a quote that says, be yourself. Nobody else have that privilege. And so you don't know who that person is. And so it's to bring that enlightenment, it's to bring that understanding, it's to show them like where they are in their journey. And most of the time, you bang smack on time in the journey and the process that you're at.
Powerful.
Yes. I would say feeling tired of the process and tired of hearing work your process is 100% human. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that you're not alone. We've all been there, and some of us are still there. Some seasons are long, some seasons are very hard and require endurance. And I would ask, what are you calling breakthrough? Because sometimes the breakthrough happens long before your circumstances change. And whether you want to hear it or not, you need to praise before your breakthrough. You need to praise for your breakthrough. The Bible says, put on a garment of praise for a spirit of heaviness. The tiredness that you're experiencing, the breakthrough that's not happening, I'm exhausted from the process. Praise until you feel the breaking of the spirit. And then you find Pastor C and you do the life audit, because then you can see with the right perspective. Our problem isn't just that we haven't seen. Our problem is that we've taken our eyes off God, who is sovereign. And I know that's not comforting when you're in the middle of the process, because it sucks. So what? God is sovereign. But God is sovereign. And he will not let his word return to him void, which means whatever he has promised you is for you. And if your eyes is on the process because it sucks and it's hard, then your perspective gets skewed and your heart becomes heavy. But if you take your eyes off the process and you turn your eyes back to God and you put your focus to the right place, because he is sovereign and he establishes and he builds, and then you can say, okay, where am I? Now my perspective is right, knowing it doesn't matter what's happening around you. Your character is being formed through this. God's got a plan. And maybe, just maybe, your breakthrough is on your doorstep, but you haven't yet seen it because it's just a little bit dark. So go praise so that you can see right, and then you can do right.
I love that, Odette. I always say that don't make a permanent decision while you're in the middle of a temporary pain. In my book, I put it a little bit different, but the principle remains the same. I understand we need to make decisions, and you said it so beautifully earlier on. I was also that person. I want to make a decision now, but I want to encourage you that maybe if you're in that place, don't make that decision so hastily. Maybe this is exactly the point where you shouldn't be making any decisions right now, because you might make a permanent decision based on a temporary pain. I love the example that you use, Pastor C, because I also speak about the root, the fruit, and the tree, the root, the tree, and the fruit. And the painful part, most of the times in our life, we get told, like, just trust the process. But the painful part feels nothing, like nothing is working at that point in time. But everything is actually happening below the surface. If you think about the roots at the bottom, it's cold, it's dark, it's wet, it's alone, like there's nothing happening, or it feels like nothing's happening. A lot is happening. Actually, everything is happening at that moment under the ground. It's just nobody's there to see it. Nobody's there to celebrate with you. And that's the part that nobody claps for. Nobody celebrates roots. I mean, that they don't do that. They celebrate fruit. So if you find yourself in that process where somebody's telling you to trust the process, identify where you are in the process. Maybe you're in the root stage. There's nothing yet to celebrate, not because there isn't, because nobody can see it. Because people can be shallow at times. They celebrate the fruit. They don't celebrate the root. But if you think about it, without those roots, the fruit will never survive the pressure. So that part is necessary. So I want to leave the listeners with this one question. What would you tell someone who's in a painful part right now, and that person that feels like nothing is working? I want to challenge you. What would you tell them? What would you tell that person? How would you encourage them? I want you to write it down. I want you to document it. I want you to put it in a special place. Maybe it's in front of your Bible. Maybe it's in the safe, because this is a very important note. Because one day is going to come a day where you need to know, what do I need to do? How do I navigate through this painful part in my life right now? And then you could take out your own note. Because what you've got to say is valuable. What you've got on the inside of you is valuable. What you give into the lives of other people is valuable. And there's going to come a time in your own life where you're going to need some value. And then you can pull from that. So answer that question for yourself. What would you tell someone who's in a painful part right now and feels like nothing is working? How would you encourage them? And there's going to come a time in your life where you need to encourage yourself. Thank you for listening. Share with us your comments. Maybe you have some more questions and we can answer that in some of our next upcoming podcasts. Thank you for spending the time with us, and hope you learned something today as much as what we all did.